Hey everybody, Derek here to bring you another video for The Walking Dead Season 5. And today I'm going to do a different kind of video. It's one of my, you know, alternate kind of videos where it would be a what if kind of situation. And today what I want to do is do a video based on characters that should have a mini series to kind of show a little bit of their backstory. I think that one of the things that you would love to see about Walking Dead is, how did some of the characters get to where they are? And we've seen that with some of the characters. I mean, a lot of them from season one, when we started out with them, we kind of saw how they, came about to be who they were. And of course, you also have some different media, like, Daryl has that video game, like Daryl and Merle have a video game, Survival Instinct. Glenn is part of the Telltale games. So you have a little bit of a thing there. And then you also have, Rick, Shane, Lori, and Carl all got their own, flashbacks throughout the series. So we kind of know where they came from. But some of the characters we don't. And, I always said, on the one hand, you have, too much of something is never really a good thing for you. I mean, it's just in general, we don't want to eat too many bags of potato chips. We don't want to drink too much alcohol, too much soda, etc. Maybe too much Walking Dead is not a good thing for you. But sometimes I always thought, to get us through that long break, how interesting would it be if they would do like a little mini series, maybe just like 6 or 7 or 8 episodes, basically doing a prequel or a mini series of some of the characters at the beginning of the apocalypse and how they became, who they were today. And I thought that'd be pretty interesting. I wanted to go over some of the characters that I thought should have their own mini series to kind of show how they became who they were. And a lot of these characters are actually more near the middle of the show or now rather than the beginning. Because you look back on a lot of the characters at the beginning, and I said, you really wouldn't make one for Carol because it just wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't be exciting because a lot of Carol's character development came after the apocalypse started. And you also, as much as I love Herschel and Maggie and Beth, you wouldn't really do one for them either because again, they were just keeping the walkers in a barn. And I just think that we kind of got the gist of what they were doing. I don't think that they could really make it entertaining enough for a mini series. Maybe like a little webisode if they wanted to do that. But I think that in order for you to really have a little bit of a mini series, there needs to be like some kind of character development there. And I feel like at that point they were all stuck in the same belief, same system that really just wouldn't make sense. We kind of already got the gist. The one character though that I did think would be very interesting to do a couple episodes on at the beginning was T-Dog. I always thought that that would have been very interesting to see him because he is described in, after he died in season 3 that he basically was a hero. That he basically went around and, checked on all the senior citizens before he, left or took them to the refugee center. Glenn talked about that with the prisoners. And I thought, if you really want to get like some kind of a, interesting, tribute to somebody, I think that would be very nice for T-Dog, for them to do that. But like, I feel like Daryl and Merle kind of got the video game, whether it's necessarily canon or not, we don't know. But I think that it pretty much kind of details already who they were and what they did. And I think the other thing is Daryl wasn't necessarily a bad guy, whenever at the beginning of season 1. Is he a little standoffish? Yes. Is he a little bit, hot-headed? Yes. Not so much like Merle. But I feel like we like Daryl now, that we really don't want to see Daryl in the negative context of who he was. So that's why I wouldn't want to see one there. Glenn might be interesting. Again, if you don't consider the Telltale video game series to be canon, I always thought that that would be pretty interesting, to see how, what he was doing and how he came to meet with the group. I think they could make something interesting out of that because Glenn pretty much, again, is almost like T-Dog in many ways. I think that he still is, like a hero. I think in many ways you could make a very interesting mini-series about him and I think that it would be very interesting to see Glenn's initial reaction to the zombie apocalypse and how he became part of the group. Dale, Amy, and Andrea, I still wouldn't, because I feel like, again, there wouldn't be that much there. Um, they're relatively characters. Like, Amy wasn't really that well explored, and Dale, really being the center moral compass, like, I don't think there's really any storyline that you could do there. Same thing with Andrea. A lot of her developments came afterwards. But of course, we get to some big characters now, and I would absolutely love to see Michonne get her own miniseries. While we have seen like the dream sequence and have heard about what happened to her, nonetheless, you could make an excellent miniseries out of that. I mean, I think you could, show exactly what happened and then realize what all was going on, and then watch Michonne afterwards as she develops into who she was. And you could potentially include Andrea in that, seeing how, Michonne grew with Andrea, to see how things were there. I think that would be very, very interesting. They could definitely make that work, no doubt about it. So they wanted to do that, I would be totally into watching Michonne's miniseries or prequel, whatever you want to call it. And another thing, you have another character, the governor. Definitely a lot of story there. I mean, so much that in fact Kirkman wrote several novels about the governor, like prequel novels that basically detailed how he came to Woodbury, how he became the governor. And I think there's another one that I think follows like the time in between when they first met Rick's group and the prison assault. Not 100% sure on that. I haven't read them yet. Haven't had time to. But I think that would definitely be very interesting to adapt those into a mini series. I mean, you could run that for like 2 if you really wanted to. I think that there's a lot of room that you could have with that kind of a mini series. I think you could definitely get several of the actors back, like Milton, Dallas Roberts. You could get Juan Carlos. I think God darn it, I can't remember his name. Jose Cantillo, I think that's his name. The guy who played Martinez. You can get him back. You get the guy who played Shumpert. I think you can get a nice group of people together and really show how Woodbury was made. I think people would be into that. I really think they would, just because of the the connection that we do see with the governor. Yeah, he is a bad guy, but I think that in many ways you also see, the kind of person that he may have been beforehand. And you kind of want to see, like I always said, if you could always check and look at how people became what they became, I think it's a very interesting story to explore. It's almost like watching the prequel trilogy and kind of seeing how Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader. Not necessarily the best example, but you get what I'm saying. You always want to know, how did somebody get to be that way? And with the governor, you kind of just start out with, this is who he is, and you automatically see him as the bad guy. But to see him as, potentially a protagonist would definitely be an interesting take on it. And I think it would change our perspectives on the governor himself. And I think that that would be a very, very good miniseries to make. I almost thought, when they said they were making a spin-off, I thought maybe they would do that, but I can understand why you would want to make a different series. Again, I don't think it's something that you would want to run on for several years, but I think if you wanted to do like 1 or 2 miniseries, like of 8 episodes back to back, like in 2 summers, if you wanted to do something like that, that might be something that I think would be interesting to watch. Then, of course, you get to season 4. Bob would not be a bad example of a miniseries that you would like to see. Because I think that what you notice is, Bob talking about how he lost groups. You've always wondered, and I always wondered myself, why did he lose those groups? What happened? Like, why was he the only survivor? And I always thought that they could make an interesting story about how Bob may have been partially responsible for losing a group. And we don't know how big these groups are, or maybe we do, but I can't remember the size of them. But if one of them was just like a few people, I think it would be very interesting to see like Bob's alcoholism playing into the story. And basically, maybe Bob was put on guard duty, got drunk one night, passed out in some ditch, woke up the next morning, and walkers had swarmed the camp. That is a very interesting story that you could portray and maybe understand the demons that Bob carries inside of him. I think he definitely has some, character to be explored there. And I think that you could kind of see how he became who he became. And then it makes sense, to see like how strong he was when he came out of it. I think it would be very nice to have that kind of a mini series for him. And then I thought this would also be interesting, but the Claimers from season 4, the last half of season 4, I think they would make a very, very good miniseries. I think it's definitely a very unique spin on how you survive in a zombie apocalypse. Like, you don't really think about claim, here it is. How did they come up with that theology? Definitely would be a very interesting way to explore and to see, how they became those group of people. I always figured like Joe, the leader, was probably not your run-of-the-mill citizen. I think he did have some maybe, criminal background and everything. And I think that it would really be interesting just to see how they came up with the claimed system. And did some of them agree with it? Some of them did not, and he had to kill some of them. I think you would really like to explore that, and really see how he was able to establish that system. I think it would just be like a quick, like 6 episodes would really take care of it, maybe even less. But I think that that would be something that I would really like to see explored if they had the chance. I mean, the chances of these actually happening are very slim, but again, a what if situation definitely would be interesting to look into, And then finally, I think that you could definitely have some very good mini series for Terminus and probably for Grady Memorial too. I mean, I think that it would. If I had to pick one or the other, I would rather see Terminus rather than Grady Memorial, because I think we really understood what was going on at Grady Memorial. I think that it would have been nice to explore some things a little more, but I don't know how interesting they could make it of a mini series. But if you did Terminus, man, would you have a great story there? Again, that is a very potential, 8 episodes in one. Like, you could do like 2 mini series of it if you want. Like, I always thought about that. Like, you could make a mini series, but you spread it out into like 2 parts. So it would almost be like a season. It would just be separated so much that it would just be considered like 2 mini series. And I think that would definitely be a very interesting topic to explore. Just seeing the way that they became who they became, the cannibals that they became. Because, you kind of get the idea from the flashbacks, but again, a lot of people complain about the flashbacks in No Sanctuary, and I kind of do too. Because really, they really didn't make the connection for me, Terminus plus really big bad guys plus taking it back over equals we have to eat people. I didn't really see the connection. I think that it would definitely be very beneficial to perhaps, explore a little bit more into that if you wanted to make a mini series out of it. One thing I always thought they should have done with Terminus was they should have made a webisode, because they did those webisodes the last 3 seasons in the interim, and I was really disappointed when they didn't do one this time. And I thought, they really missed a very good opportunity to establish Terminus. I think that would have been a very, very good idea. You basically release this thing saying, hey, we're going to make a webisode on Terminus, basically explaining who they were, how they became what they became. Would have worked perfectly. Absolutely would have been a very good segue into season 5, and you wouldn't have had to waste time on those flashbacks. You could have just went right into the episode and made it more interesting and made more time, having more zombie action, exploring more of the characters, things like that. You could have had more time to do things like that if you would have made the webisode. And I think if you wanted to do a mini series on it, that would not be a bad idea in any way, shape, or form. Again, the chances of these things happening, slim. I mean, I don't expect it to happen, but you always look back and you think about unanswered questions that you have about the survivors. Because just like they kind of said, like right after Beth died, they talk about how you don't always get to explore all of the characters all the way. And that's just the way that the show goes. And that's just, the zombie apocalypse in general, or any storyline. I mean, when you're thrust into a dangerous world, you're not going to be able to necessarily say everything you want to say and do everything that you want to do. That's just, part of the story, and that's just part of the way that the world is. But I think that having the chance to go back and take a look at some of these characters and really see how they became what they became, I think would be absolutely phenomenal. I think it would be very good for them to do if they really wanted, keep interest in The Walking Dead. Like, hey, tune in this summer. We're going to do a little mini series on Woodbury. And I think people might be into that. I think if you wanted to, you could test the theory, see if it works out great. Because I think the spinoff is really going to help decide, are we really into just the Walking Dead story like in the comics, or could we, are we really that much into what they do that they can make a spinoff and make it work? If they do that and the spinoff works, hey, I say why not? Go for some miniseries. I think it would be a very good idea. So that's my take on it. Don't be afraid to leave your comments below. Do you think that there's somebody I missed? Do you think that I had some good ideas? What would you want to see out of the characters? Don't be afraid to put your input. Feel free to subscribe. I have more videos coming. If you guys have any video topics that you would like to suggest, don't be afraid to do so. I definitely am open to any suggestion. It's kind of hard now. We're almost a month away, and there's really not too much to talk about because not that much is being released, to be read about what's going to happen. So if you guys have any suggestions, don't be afraid to leave them. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and thank you very much.